Thank you. So back to Slavic languages, Bulgarian, and one more. Ours is a very narrow topic. Actually, we're talking about one particular function of one particular derivational element. It is an interesting one, though. It has deep roots. Actually, one deep root, a properly European one, a verbal root, which means something like take or carry across or through, reconstructed as per. And among its reflexes in Indo-European languages is the old Slavic preverb pre, which is used in a variety of purposes, variety of functions already from the earliest attested times. It means going beyond or surpassing something. It means transporting or transforming. So the second meaning is certainly the original one, the spatial meaning of crossing, going over, going above, going through something, and from there going beyond a border, beyond a boundary, beyond a certain quantity. But it's also used not only as a preverb, but as a generalized relative prefix. So it adjoins with adjectives, nouns, verbs too, meaning something complete, something excessive. Now it has a descendant in Bulgarian, which looks in the same way, Bulgarian preverb pre, which is inherited, obviously, and inherits the functions of its ancestor only, with a slight reshuffle of the productivity in its various uses. So it's mostly used as a recursive preverb, meaning to redo something, do it again, or in a new way, a mark of a recursive mode of action. But it's also used as an intensive marker, a majority of resultative mode of action, due to a degree higher than the norm, transgressive, do across an area. And a variety of other functions which are less commonly met, attested in fewer lexemes. It has two counterparts in Ukrainian. One of them is inherited. It is the etymological counterpart of Bulgarian pre, which is predictably East Slavic pere, of which the most prominent meaning is resultative, passive, distributive, due upon all available objects, which is something that Bulgarian does not have, so due to all objects in a certain set. It also has the majorative intensive, meaning the recursive meaning, and various others. So most of the meanings are the same, except they are slightly ordered, or it's reordered in a different way. Apart from that, Ukrainian also has another preverb which also goes back to the same Old Slavic source, but it's not inherited, it's borrowed. Pre, which is of South Slavic origin, so in fact it is a loan from Church Slavonic, and it is used as an relative marker, mostly with adjectives and adverbs. Well, so this was the prehistory, and the phenomenon that our talk today is devoted to is something we call re-Reduplication, which consists in the use in close succession of two cognate words as a rule of the same part of speech and in the same grammatical form. The second being formed with the prefix pre in Bulgarian or pere in Ukrainian, where the first has no prefix or has another. And in general, this pursues a rhetorical effect. So a concept is expressed twice with added emphasis the second time. And this results in intensification. This, as I said, is a general definition. It is fuzzy in several ways, and it has to be so. Now, let us add some more detail, some more content to this. But first, here's a a little illustration of how it works in Bulgarian and in Ukrainian. So these are two examples from literary texts. So in Bulgarian, patilite I prepatili, voinici, seasoned and over-seasoned soldiers. A word, as I said, repeated twice in close sequence with pre the second time. Or in Ukrainian, bachelor, pere-bachelor, seen and seen a lot. We literally sound like seen, re-seen. Again, a way to express intensity. The material that we use for this study is a parallel bilingual corpus that we've been constructing for some years now. It consists of fiction, mostly novels. It contains 10 sectors of approximately equal size, divided by original language. So there's a variety of original languages from which our texts are translated into Bulgarian and Ukrainian. 2 million words each, and also the Bible in canonical translation from Church Slavonic into Bulgarian and from Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek into Ukrainian. So the total size of the book is approximately 21 million words in the two languages taken together. So in this corpus, we find a total of 130 instances of re-Reduplication in one or both languages, including 48 in Bulgarian only, 19 in both Bulgarian and Ukrainian, and 63 in Ukrainian only. There were a number of re-Reduplications with adjectives or adverbs, which we disregarded because for this purpose, Ukrainian tends to also use the borrowed prefix pre. And we were interested in the correspondence of Bulgarian pre to its etymological counterpart pe in this study. So we didn't look at those. We found mostly use of pre and pere in this construction with finite verb forms, gerunds, participles, adjectives, nouns, and pronouns. And specifically in Ukrainian, there's another category which can be distinguished invectives. So these are formally adverbs, pronouns, or nouns, but they're used with no regard to their parts of speech and original semantics. So in fact, when they're used in this construction, they lose their original affiliation to one part of speech or the other, and they're used in a new function. They are a hallmark of very, very colloquial speech. But since we're dealing with fiction, we do have a number of examples of these. Generally speaking, the two words are the same part of speech, except for a few occurrences of adjective and pre or pere with a participle. Very, very few. And anyway, adjective and participle are very close to one another in many ways. The grammatical form is likewise the same, except for one occasion of a gerund combined with a pere finite form in Ukrainian. So, vybiraючи перебирав, which means chose choicely. Literally choosing over chose, something like that. Also, an interesting fact: pronouns only occur in Ukrainian, not commonly either. But here's a sentence in which we have two occurrences of pronouns in this construction in Ukrainian: so and so, such and such. Again, it's a hallmark of very, very colloquial speech. And here we see how the distribution by part of speech works out in the corpus, how it correlates with the languages. So what we see is that this construction is mostly productive with verbs, finite verbs, I mean finite verb forms in Bulgarian. Whereas participles and nouns are most commonly found in Ukrainian. The rest aren't very common anyway, and as I said, invectives are something restricted to Ukrainian as our pronouns. The derivational relationship between the two items in the tuple, now this is a slightly more formalized kind of notation that you see in the left-hand column of this table here, but basically the prefix in question, the preverb pre or per, may simply be added to the second word in the couple, or it may displace another prefix. So there may be another prefix which is accent in the second word. And this is especially common in Ukrainian. Also, there may be another prefix on the second word, combining with the pere or pre. Now, this is about equally productive in the two languages. And there may be a suffix which the second word acquires, which the first word does not have, which most often happens if the second word is a verb that has been converted to the perfective aspect by the use of the preverb, and then it has to go back to the imperfective. So that's the subject that is used. This is especially common in Bulgarian. There are a few examples here in the bottom half of this slide of what I mean. This kind of thing happening in Ukrainian with nouns or participles, as I said. In general, nouns and participles are very productive in Ukrainian. This construction, zakuska, perepuska, which are actually two words which means pretty much the same, order or snack. So they use together, simply enhances the meaning. And as you say, pere replaces the za. The first place. Or rozkazano perekazano, told and retold, where roz is replaced by pere in the second word. Or bledna prednjala. Now this is in Bulgarian, an example of the productivity of the pattern in which you have one more suffix on the second word. Or play, something like pale blanche, an adjective combining with a participle. And the two things have very similar meanings. The grammatical link between the two items, as I said, they occur in close succession. This was admittedly a fuzzy way of saying that they may be adjacent, they may be joined or separated by something, some word or a few words, maybe a conjunction, or they may be simply juxtaposed on the paper. This usually takes the form of a comma, or a speech short pause, maybe, or hyphenation. In the two languages, the productivity of these patterns is different, but in both languages, it's mostly a conjunction that is used. But in Bulgarian, conjunction predominates absolutely. In Ukrainian, things are a bit more balanced. So again, a couple of examples of how this works in the two languages. And the meaning of the prefix, which can vary. Most often, the meaning of the prefix is intensive or recursive. So the whole adds up to do and overdo, or do and redo. In either case, what this adds up to is what this results in emphasis or intensity. But occasionally, the second verb, which is the verb of the prefix, does not exist at all outside of this construction. Especially in the most colloquial varieties of the construction. So chestnut, chestnut, for example. Honest and over honest, literally. Or it may be a close synonym of the first word. Zmine peremine, which in this particular case, translation from English, actually takes the place of a literal repetition of the two words in the English original. Or maybe a less closed synonym, so the gradation is more clearly felt. Някой ме следи и ме преследва, and someone is spying on me, watching me, literally following me, pursuing me. Or it may bear some other relation to the first word. So in fact, this boils out to another mode of action, which I'm not going to talk about here, but there's a little about it written on the paper. So the prefix actually adds some other kind of meaning. And the effect you get in the context is one of intensity again. Exceptionally, the second item may bear no synchronic identical relation to the first. So this is one example in which the two words are etymologically related, but synchronically the relationship is not felt at all. But you do have the effect. Or it has a separate lexical meaning, for that matter, even a terminological meaning. So the use of the two words in succession is not in itself a rhetorical device, but still, arguably, it is dictated by the fact that this kind of rhetorical device exists in the language. So the speaker, or the writer, or the translator chooses this construction because this construction exists. An especially interesting example is the one in the translation of Jules Verne here. Zakis perikis, zeleza in Ukrainian, iron protoxide and peroxide. So this is not exactly gradation, not exactly intensity, because the two words actually have different terminological meaning. But the interesting thing is that in the original, they are named in the opposite direction. So if you were to translate this literally in the same order, same construction as it was in French, it would be perikis zakis zeleza. The translator has swapped the places of the two words, so the word with pere is going to end up in the second place. And maybe Scott at the Perry Holiday in the extension from Dickens, staircase and passages could be taken as an example. This thing too. This is a summary of the distribution by meaning of the prefix. It can be intensive, it can be recursive, or in some cases it is hard to identify it as one or the other. So this is the group that we call miscellaneous here. And as you can see, intensive is mostly in Bulgarian. Miscellaneous is mostly in Ukrainian. Recursive is kind of in the middle. But if we see this construction used in both Bulgarian and Ukrainian, then it's most likely that the second item has a recursive meaning. And one final kind of distribution that worked on, but I'm not going to talk about it here for want of time, is the distribution by source language, because as I said, our texts come from fiction and the original languages vary. One thing that we can note is that in both Bulgarian and Ukrainian, this construction occurs mostly in texts that were originally in Ukrainian. So in Ukrainian, it's mostly used by original writers. In Bulgarian, it's mostly used by translators from Ukrainian. And there are a few more observations that you can make, such as, for example, in Bulgarian, biblical translation is very common. It occurs often from the translations from Italian or in French, so this probably has to do with the recreation of similar things from the original language. Finally, we can see in some cases, we can trace the rendition of one device or another in the original, because sometimes in the original we see an analogous reduplicative construction, so previously similar semantics, as I said, most languages have such, or an exact repetition, or repetition with another kind of modification, or no repetition at all. I'm not going to dwell on this now. I'm just going to summarize things. So the constructions are similar, but when it comes to actual use, they do differ in many points, which can be explained in part by the presence of a borrowed prefix pre in Ukrainian. As I said, it has a relief there of some of its functions, especially the literary language. But on the other hand, in some translated texts, there is an occasion for examining the impact of the original languages and the translator's attitudes to using the vernacular constructions of the target languages. And to go back to the broad topic of the conference, the material for this study was selected by a semi-automatic search in a bilingual corpus of aligned text, but the corpus is continually evolving, so maybe with appropriate alignment, such search and research could be facilitated, and maybe one of these days we'll get around to that. Thank you.